Hey guys, tonight we begin with the elegant, disciplined, and often brutally unforgiving world of feudal Japan. A land of cherry blossoms, sharpened swords, and complex social rules make modern tax codes look like coloring books. It's where honor is life, silence is power, and sneezing at the wrong moment could get you beheaded. So, before you get completely comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I always love seeing who's joining this sleepy little journey from around the world. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe switch on a soft fan if you enjoy that gentle whispering background noise. And let's slip quietly into tonight's journey. You wake beneath a pearl-colored sky, where the air carries the scent of early morning mist, charcoal smoke, and distant plum blossoms. You're standing barefoot on a narrow dirt path. There are no signs, no directions. Just the soft rustling of fabric in the breeze and the creaking of bamboo somewhere behind you. You've arrived at a village with no name, or maybe it does have one, but it's only ever spoken in whispers passed down through generations. A secret the land itself remembers. Your feet are wrapped in rough straw sandals, the kind that makes you regret every pair of shoes you've ever hated. Your robe is tied slightly off-center. Your hair's too messy. Your posture is too proud. You don't belong here, and everyone knows it. A barefoot child runs past you, laughing, with a wooden toy sword stuck through his sash. Behind him, an older man sweeps the dirt, not to clean it, but to prove he's still alive. The homes are low and humble, their thatched roofs layered like old winter blankets. No one greets you, but everyone sees you. And here, that's somehow worse. You try bowing. That's what they do in movies, right? But you bow too fast, too deep. A group of older women watching from behind a rice paper screen sigh in perfect unison. It doesn't sound enjoyable, yet oddly polite. You keep walking, slowly, gently, because even the wind here seems to have better manners than you do. The village stretches out like a scroll, hand-painted, faded by sunlight, delicately detailed. The smell of grilled fish and miso wafts from a nearby stall. Your stomach growls. The man behind the counter eyes you and then silently offers a meat skewer. You nod. He says nothing. You hand him a coin. He raises an eyebrow. You hand him another. He nods once. Transaction complete. The fish is salty, a little burnt, and the best thing you've eaten all day. Mainly because it's the only thing you've eaten all day. You chew slowly, trying to look normal, while everyone around you continues the fine art of ignoring you very deliberately. Time doesn't move here. It lingers. Even the shadows seem patient. A woman pours water from a ceramic jug with grace, so practiced it feels choreographed. A dog naps under a camphor tree, twitching in a dream that likely involves chasing birds or chewing sandal straps. You find a hill. Not high, not steep, just tall enough to see the village from above. You climb it, your sandals slipping slightly on the dust. At the top, you sit beneath a cherry blossom tree that's likely older than any house here. Its petals fall slowly, silently, one by one, as if even gravity respects tradition. From here, the village looks endless. Chimneys breathe soft trails of smoke into the sky. Children's laughter rings like birdsong. A distant temple bell marks the hour. Or maybe it's a prayer. You don't know. You don't need to. The world is quiet enough for you to hear your heartbeat. And this time, it's steady. You start to feel calm. Then you hear it. The faint metallic chime of armor. You turn your head slowly. A samurai walks the path below, alone. His movement is fluid and gentle, like a brushstroke in motion. One hand rests lightly on the hilt of his katana, not out of fear, but from muscle memory. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't have to. You bow instinctively. This time, not too deep, not too fast. Somehow, you get it right. Whether by accident or instinct, you don't know. He walks on. You stay frozen, not in fear, but in reverence. As if you've seen a statue come alive, a ghost wrapped in discipline. And that's when you realize, this world doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about your form, your silence, your stillness, your place. You're not ready for any of that. The sun begins to set, casting gold across the thatched roofs and deepening the shadows. A flute begins to play somewhere, a low, trembling note rising and falling like a memory trying to find its way home. You exhale. You've made it through your first day. You haven't been arrested, or challenged, or insulted, at least not out loud. That's good enough. But tomorrow you'll need to rise with the farmers, work the land, bend your back to the rhythm of rice and rain. And if you're lucky, you might live long enough to bow the right way. A wooden clapper echoes through the village as the sun stretches its fingers over the horizon. Tonk, tonk, tonk. A slow, steady rhythm bouncing off narrow alleys and rice paper walls. It's not an alarm. It's older than that. It's how morning begins here. Not with urgency, but inevitability. You rise. Your back protests. Your legs feel borrowed from a scarecrow. And your straw sandals, still damp from yesterday's embarrassment, wait for you like a bad decision you're about to make again. Outside, the world is still and golden. Mist clings to the thatched roofs like old memories. Crows caw in the distance, gossiping. A cat watches you from a rooftop, eyes half closed, tail twitching in judgment. Today is your first day in the rice fields. A boy, maybe 12, hands you a woven hat. He doesn't speak. He points toward the terraced paddies below the hill, glittering like mirrors in the morning light, flooded and waiting. They shine like glass bowls laid out for the gods. You follow the others down a winding path. No one talks much. Here, conversations are rare before noon, or maybe they know talkin' wastes breath. Better spent bending, lifting, and enduring. The air thickens as you descend. It smells of damp soil, young rice shoots, and something sweet and rotten, like last year's harvest still clinging to the roots. You step into the rice field and immediately regret it. The mud swallows your feet like a hungry ghost, cold, dense, determined to keep you. You lurch forward, arms flailing, nearly falling into the water. A woman nearby, 70, maybe eternal, glances your way, not unkind, just unimpressed. She gestures, bent knees, straight spine, toes first. It's like stepping into a bow that never finishes. You try again, slower this time, calmer. Your foot disappears into the mud with a plump, then the other. You balance. Somehow, you're in. The work begins. One seedling at a time, you plant rice. Tiny green stalks, no taller than your finger, pressed into the earth by hand. Step, sink, place. Step, sink, place. Not difficult exactly, but relentless. The sun climbs. So do the mosquitoes. They arrive in clouds, bold, ancient, entirely unafraid. They know you're new. They smell your weakness. You slap your neck. Miss-slap again. The boy from earlier snickers without turning around. This is silent hazing. By mid-morning, your arms ache. Your back folds like paper. And the mud has become your closest relationship. It clings to your calves, your sleeves, your pride. The older woman hums as she works, a low, wordless tune. You don't recognize it, but somehow it fits. Her planting rhythm matches the song's rhythm, like she's playing an instrument no one else can hear. It's all ritual. Planting rice isn't just labor. It's belief. It's survival. It's time to make it visible. Each stalk is a prayer. Each row is a memory of last year's harvest. Each blister on your hand promises this village might still be here tomorrow. There's reverence in repetition, and you're only just starting to see it. There is a short break when the bell rings from the temple across the field. The villagers straighten, stretch, and sip tea from bamboo flasks. You sit on a rock, legs trembling. A man offers you a ball of rice wrapped in leaves. You take it with both hands. He nods. You bite in. It's simple, warm, slightly salty, and somehow, it's the best thing you've eaten in years. Hunger here is different. It makes everything taste like gratitude. The woman hands you a cloth. You wipe your face. She points to the blisters forming on your palms. Then, wordlessly, he dabs them with something from a pouch, a greenish paste that smells of pine and vinegar. You wince. She smiles, and for the first time all morning, so do you. The work resumes, slower now, but steadier. Your feet begin to learn the depth of the mud. Your fingers stop trembling. Your posture, once awkward, now bends more naturally, like a reed moving with the water instead of against it. You begin to sweat. A lot. But it's the clean kind of tired. The kind that says, I belong here, even if just a little. By sunset, the fields glow pale gold. The villagers gather their tools. You trudge back up the path, muddy and sun-darkened, your hat askew, but standing taller than when the day began. The boy tosses you a cloth. The older woman pats your shoulder. And the wind, somehow, feels less like judgment now, and more like welcome. You reach your hut just as twilight settles. The paper walls glow from within, lantern light flickering like fireflies. You strip off your robe, scrub mud from your feet, and sit beside the hearth, where a pot of broth bubbles gently, maybe radish, maybe turnip, perhaps something with more heart than flavor. Outside, crickets begin their nightly hymn. Somewhere distant, a flute plays, the same note you heard yesterday, but now it sounds softer, familiar. You lie back on your thin straw mat, hands behind your head, and let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Today, you planted rice. You bled a little. You hurt a lot, but you weren't useless. And in a world like this, that means everything. The morning arrives quietly. No chiming bells. No rooster crowing this time. Only the soft drip of dew sliding off the roof and the distant rustling of someone sweeping a path that doesn't need sweeping. You wake to the smell of damp straw, wood smoke, and the faint aroma of overcooked rice. It's the kind of scent that whispers, you're still here. And somehow, you are. Outside, the village is breathing. You step out carefully, trying not to trip on the threshold again. The older man across the road is already seated cross-legged, sharpening a home with the kind of calm that suggests he's capable of murder, if someone speaks too loudly before tea. You nod politely. He doesn't nod back. Instead, he glances at you briefly and returns to his blade. It's not an insult. It's a gesture. By now, you've learned that in feudal Japan, words are optional. But silence? Silence says everything. Today, you won't be going to the rice fields. Today, you're going to learn how not to be rude. Ironically, it's much more complicated than it sounds. Because in this village, even standing incorrectly can offend 3 generations. Your first lesson? Don't speak unless spoken to. Seems simple. But your Western anxiety, so used to filling the air with chatter and nervous chuckles, starts twitching. Here, silence isn't awkward. It's sacred, comfortable, expected. You head toward the well. A group of women is drawing water, their hands moving in perfect rhythm. Buckets dip, lift, pour. Each motion as fluid as calligraphy. You approach cautiously. One of them glances at you. You bow. She bows back. The others don't even look your way. That's fine, that's polite. You try to say something. Mistake. One of the women shifts her weight slightly. A subtle step back. That's it. No frown, no scolding. But you've said too much already. So instead, you nod, take a cup of water, and walk away. A bit faster than you'd hoped, sacrificing some of your solemn dignity. Lesson 2. Don't hold eye contact too long, especially with elders, and not with samurai. Even children seem to understand this. They rush past you, eyes down, hands tucked in sleeves. You try to mimic them. Hands folded, eyes lowered, walking like the earth has whispered a secret to you. You pass a man in dark robes. His face is unreadable. His hair is tied so tightly in a top knot it looks painful. You glance up, just for a moment. He stops walking. So do you. You bow, quickly, deeply, then drop your gaze, heart pounding like it's trying to escape your chest. He doesn't move. Then, a breath. He walks on. You don't exhale until he disappears into the trees. Then, a woman silently scolds you with just a glance. You shouldn't bow too deeply. It confuses. It makes people think you're hiding something and/or trying too hard, or worse, being sarcastic. And in feudal Japan, sarcasm can get you stabbed. You join a group offering prayers at the local shrine. A small wooden torii gate marks the sacred boundary. You stop before stepping through. Everyone else does too. A man claps twice, bows, and drops a coin into the offering box with the reverence of someone negotiating directly with the wind. You mimic him. Poorly. Your bow is too shallow. Your clap is too loud. A bird startles. A monk looks over. You freeze, then bow again, with all the apology your spine can convey. The monk doesn't correct you. He gazes at the sky, as if asking the gods for patience. Lesson 3. Poise is choreography, and you, my friend, are tap dancing with 2 left feet on sacred ground. Back at the house, your host, a man of few words and fewer smiles, offers you tea. You accept with both hands, bow slightly, and wait. You don't sip until he does. That part, you've learned. He nods once. Somehow, that is an entire conversation. The tea is warm, slightly bitter, comforting. It's like being scolded by someone who also knitted you a blanket. He gestures toward the garden. You follow him outside. He hands you a broom. You begin sweeping, slowly, carefully. The path is already clean. But that's not the point. Sweeping is meditation, order, a dedication to the present moment. At first, your movements are clumsy, but then you find the rhythm, back and forth, back and forth. Little spirals etched into the dust like quiet punctuation marks. You don't say a word, you don't need to. As sunset falls, your shoulders ache, your knees creak, but no one shouts, no one sighs. And when you bow to your host before sleep, he bows in return, just a little lower than before. Not approval, not yet, but it may be the beginning of belonging. You lie down on your straw mat, the walls glowing dimly from candlelight. Crickets chirp outside. The night is incredible. The silence is gentle. The village breathes around you, slowly, quietly, accepting. Today, you spoke fewer words than any day in your life. And yet, you've learned more than most conversations could ever teach. In this place, politeness isn't decoration, it's survival. And grace is the only language everyone speaks. The sun had long since set, swallowed by the pines surrounding the village like silent, watchful monks. A pale moon had taken its place, not quite whole, but round enough to illuminate the stone paths and glimmer in puddles like shards of silvered glass. The air smelled of wood smoke and earth, and something fainter, older. You walk carefully, straw sandals brushing the hardened ground with each step. Everything around you feels soft, slowed down. But I'm not quite asleep. Not yet. Feudal Japan doesn't fall into the night. It bows into it. And you're about to learn that bedtime here is a ritual. Your host's home is small but refined. Every plank, tatami mat, and paper wall feels like it was placed there with intention. Not for luxury, but for balance. You remove your sandals at the door and step onto the raised floor with the reverence usually reserved for shrines. Inside, it's dim. An oil lamp flickers, casting long, swaying shadows across the room like ghostly dancers. You're shown to your sleeping area, not exactly a bed, but a neatly folded futon on the tatami floor. A thin pillow rests at one end, as stiff as honesty. A woven blanket lies atop it, no thicker than a polite excuse. It does not look comfortable, because it's not meant to be. You sit down, then glance up. There are no doors here. Just sliding screens of paper stretched over wooden frames. Beautiful. Fragile. As soundproof as wet parchment. You look around. The rest of the family is here too. The host, his wife, 2 small children, and someone who might be the grandmother, curled in the corner like a sleeping question mark. All of them together in one room, breathing, blinking and drifting off without a word. And now, so must you. But first, more lessons. Lesson 1. No talking after dark, unless it's essential, or sacred, or both. The night is for resting, reflecting, repenting, not for chatting about your aching knees or the strange fish you ate for lunch. So you bow, you lie down, and you try not to move too much, because space here is shared, both literally and spiritually. The paper walls don't just divide rooms, they divide worlds, just barely. You shift onto one side. The pillow crackles a little. It's filled with buckwheat hulls. It's good for the spine, bad for dreaming. The room breathes. Someone coughs. A child whimpers. The older woman sighs in her sleep. Then silence. And in that silence, a presence. You suddenly remember what you were told earlier. This house, like many others, has its kami. A family spirit. Not angry, not cruel, but watchful, protective, and sometimes fickle. You glance at the household altar in the corner. A tiny shelf holding incense, a cup of sake, and a faded photo of someone long gone. You bow your head slightly, just in case. Lesson 2. Never sleep with your feet facing the altar. It's disrespectful, like kicking your great-grandfather in the face. You adjust, slowly, carefully. The mat creaks. Someone stirs. You freeze. Eventually the room settles again. The oil lamp sputters and dies. Now it's completely dark. You lie. Still, every sound amplified. The wind whistling under the eaves. The distant hoot of an owl. And closer still, the soft, even breaths of 5 other people who have somehow made peace with sleeping on the floor next to strangers. You, however, are wide awake. You shift. The futon protests. A mosquito whines near your ear. You slap wildly. You miss. The child beside you snorts in his sleep. You wonder if exile is still an option. Eventually, you will fall asleep. Not gently, not romantically. But how can a person give up against the rules of a world they barely understand? You drift, and you dream, not of home, comfort, or warm pillows, but of falling through layers of paper doors, chased by ghosts with impeccable posture. At some point before dawn, you wake, not thoroughly, just enough to realize 2 things. You're still here, and you need to pee. But the toilet is outside. And it's dark, and cold, and you're barefoot. And if you step on the wrong board or slide the wrong door, you might wake the grandmother, who, by now, you're certain is part Tengu. So you lie back down, silent, suffering, respectful, Outside, the wind begins to rise. The trees creak. And somewhere far off, a fox cries out. Sharp, sudden, eerie. You pull the blanket tighter. Not for warmth, but for reassurance. Because here, the night is not empty. It is full of spirits, stories, and the memories of 1,000 generations who have learned to sleep, quietly, gently, and with just the right amount of fear. You wake to the faintest rustling, like a ghost folding blankets, careful not to wake even itself. But it's not a ghost. It's the older woman, already up, her silver hair tied neatly behind her neck, her eyes kind yet alert, as though she hadn't slept. The sky is still gray. In the dim morning light, everything feels soft. The oil lamp flickers like an old firefly. No one speaks. No one needs to. Every movement is gentle, as if the whole house had silently agreed not to let the morning break too loudly. You sit up. The tatami mat crackles beneath your hand. Your pillow still bears the dents of your restless sleep. You try folding the futon like you've seen others do it. Neatly, evenly, square. But your result resembles a squashed rice cake halfway to an offering. It's okay. You'll have more chances to practice if you're allowed to stay. A moment later, you're invited out onto the veranda. The sky has shifted to a pale citrus hue. The mist lifts slowly, as if it too is reluctant to let go of the night. Before, you are a small wooden tray. Simple, rustic, refined. On it, a bowl of white rice tilted just so, a piece of grilled fish golden and crisp, a steaming bowl of miso soup, a few slices of pickled vegetables, and a pair of chopsticks, resting across a tiny wooden stand like a bridge. You sit down, careful not to breathe too loudly. No one says, "Itadakimasu." No one says, "Enjoy your meal." Because here, eating is an act of reverence. Reverence for the cook. Reverence for the farmer. Reverence for the spirits that once swam as fish or grew quietly in the mud as rice grains. You bow your head. So does the household. Not in unison, not by command. It is a coincidental rhythm, as if it had been rehearsed in a previous life. You reach for the chopsticks and make your first mistake. You clumsily pick them up with one hand, the tips pointing straight toward your soup bowl. The little girl beside you glances your way, not disapproving, just, oh. Chopsticks should never point at anyone, never be stuck upright, never clatter. You adjust them, awkwardly, like trying to retrieve your dignity one piece at a time. You try to pick up the fish. It's slippery. It slides. It drops onto the mat. You freeze. The little girl leans over, picks it up, and places it gently back on your tray, without laughing, without judgment, just a slight bow, as if she's redeemed the mistake for you. The older woman ladles some soup into your bowl, scallions, seaweed, and the quiet warmth of forgiveness. You bow even deeper. The first bite of rice enters your mouth. It is soft, sweet, silent, not like the rushed industrial rice of modern days. This rice tastes like it's meditated through 3 seasons, soaked in mountain wind and rainwater, then chosen to lie here and tell you a story about patience. You slow down, not out of politeness, but because the rice makes you want to. Each dish is simple. Fish unseasoned, pickles not crispy, broth so clear it feels like sipping morning fog. And yet, somehow everything fits, seamlessly. Like the verses of a poem you're not smart enough to write, only lucky enough to read. You want to say something, maybe thank you, but no one speaks. Not out of coldness, but because thank you are already there. In the way they place their chopsticks back, the way they pour tea without touching the rim, the way they wash the tray without a single clink. When the meal ends, you bow. This time, correctly. No one points it out. No one corrects you, but you know. And then very softly, the host looks at you and says the first thing you've ever heard from him. Gohan wa tada no gohan janai. Rice is not just rice. You don't fully understand, but you nod. And you begin to feel that you do. Not just the meal, the village. People here live how they eat, quietly, completely, wasting nothing. Afternoon settles over the village like a light cloak. The sunlight shifts from gold to honey, then to a gentle hue-like breath, bright enough to see but too soft to distinguish between person and shadow. The wind passes through the torii gates, lifting hems of robes, ringing wind chimes like whispers from ancestors. And today is bath day. Not the private kind, with a closed door, hot water roaring, and coconut-scented body wash. Number here, bathing is a communal ritual, an event, a message to the village that says, I no longer stink, at least not this week. You're led to a wooden bathhouse near the stream. Low roof, sliding doors, moss clinging to its sides as though the building itself were a living creature. Outside, a wooden sign bears faded characters. Beneath it, a pair of wooden sandals. You take off your shoes. Step inside. Immediately, steam wraps around you. Thick, warm, carrying the scent of damp wood, ash soap, and people. No perfume, no chemicals. Just the smell of realness, of cleanness, of living. 3 large wooden tubs sit side by side. The water is crystal clear. Steam rises like smoke from an old song. One man is scrubbing another's back with a coarse cloth, no words. Just the sound of water pouring, brush on the skin, and teeth chattering quietly from nerves. You're handed a small towel. Very small. Do not cover anything. Remind yourself that you still have a sense of modesty. The man gestures toward a low bench along the wall. A ladle rests next to a wooden bucket. You bow. Sit down. Step 1. Wash yourself before entering the tub. No diving in. No dirtying of the water. No rinsing your soul while your body is still caked in mud. You scoop water. Splash it on yourself. Cold. Very cold. Your whole body shivers like bamboo in a mountain gust. You exhale sharply. Mistake. No loud breathing in the bathhouse. You bow again, scoop more water, wash from head to toe. Slowly. Humbly. Here. Cleanliness isn't about lather and bubbles. It's about how much respect you show others by sharing the same water. When you think you're done, you stand, bow slightly toward the hot bath as if asking permission, then step in slowly. And, oh my, it is hot. Not a relaxing warmth, but the kind of heat that makes you think, so this is how soup feels right before the noodles are added. You dip your legs in. Your heart drums like a festival taiko. You close your eyes, breathe steadily, and ease in, bit by bit. By the time the water reaches your chest, you're not thinking about tomorrow anymore. I was just wondering, can a human body melt into flour? Around you, everyone sits in stillness. No talking, no smiling, no staring. Each person in the tub is like a statue carved from steam. An older man rests his arm on the tub's edge, eyes closed, lips slightly pursed. The expression of someone who may have once slain 3 bandits but now just wants a nap. A young man wipes his face with a towel, eyes far away, perhaps remembering someone. A small child giggles. His father glances over. Even laughter must be small. You feel small too, not because you're an outsider, but because in this bath, all identities dissolve. Armor is left at the door, status at the gate. What remains is skin, breath, and sore muscles softened by silence. You begin to feel light, not from the water, but from not pretending for once, not bowing out of fear, not speaking just enough to avoid offense, not choosing the right glance, the proper distance, or the right volume. Just sitting still. The steam carries away your self-consciousness. Your body loosens, and your mind empties, as if one layer of yourself has been peeled away, and the one underneath is calmer. When it's time to leave, you bow again and step out slowly. Dry yourself with a towel too short for modesty. Dress again, tie your belt. No one says, "Nice bath." No one waves or says, "See you next time." Only gentle nods, soft footsteps, and a warm silence drape over the afternoon like a shared blanket. On the way home, the breeze feels cooler. The grass is softer. Your face glows from the heat, but your heart has settled like a pond at dusk. You've washed away more than mud. You've washed away your alienation. It all begins with a drum beat. Deep, wide, like the heartbeat of a beast dreaming in the forest. You look up. Dusk has fallen. The rice fields suddenly shimmer, not from dew, but from rows of paper lanterns now strung along the paths, swaying gently in the wind like friendly spirits just waking from a long sleep. You're summoned to the village square. No one explains why. Only hurried footsteps, children giggling, and the scent of baked sweets in the air, warm, like a memory. The village is entering a festival. You see people changing clothes, light cotton yukata with soft colors and cloud-like patterns drifting like rivers. You're given one too. You fumble with the sash, tying it awkwardly to the side. The older woman adjusts it for you, silently. But her eyes are as gentle as a warm tea. By the time you step outside, the square is complete. A circle has formed around a large drum set on the packed earth. The drummer wears white, with a cloth tied around his head, raising the sticks like he's saluting a god before striking. Boom! The sound drops like a bowl of water, spilling everywhere, soaking into your chest, your gut, the places you thought were already hardened. And then, they begin to dance. Not wild, swaying, or loud. Not impulsive. Not flashy. Just steady movements in a circle. Arms rising, falling, turning slightly, touching the earth. Shoulders rolling, stepping back, like the moon dancing through seasons. You stand on the outside. Then, a child grabs your hand. Their eyes sparkle like they're playing with the universe. You step into the circle. You try to copy them. You lift your arms, too high. You turn, too fast. You rise on your toes, off rhythm. No one says a word. But the older man behind you gently places a hand on your shoulder, showing you how to lower your elbows. An older woman taps your knee, guiding your step. No one laughs. No one glares. Only the quiet patience of a community long used to teach lost spirits how to walk correctly on this land. You begin to breathe with the drum. Your arms soften. Your legs stop trembling. You're still wrong, but you're getting adorably wrong now. And then comes a moment. Just a moment. You stop thinking about yourself. Stop thinking about the dance. Stop thinking about who might be watching. You're simply there, with them, in the rhythm of the drum, in the lantern glow, in the shared breath of a village, dreaming together beneath the stars. During a break, you sit with a group of children. A kindly woman offers you a cold cup of tea and a little mochi shaped like a rabbit. You bow in thanks. The children laugh. One asks where you're from. You say, "Very far away." They nod. To them, far doesn't matter, as long as you're here, playing together, bowing to the drum together, getting things wrong the same way they once did. After the dance, there's a puppet show, with wooden figures, a slow, steady narrator, and lantern light as soft as a childhood dream's memory. You don't understand the whole story, but you understand the feeling. And that is enough. When the festival ends, Everyone tidies up gently. No rush, no orders. Everyone knows what to do. Children gather litter. Adults fold mats. The drummer wipes the sticks with a silk-like polishing sword. You help gather lantern cords. An old man, now unlit, hands you a paper lantern and says, "Take it home. Hang it again tomorrow, if it doesn't rain." You nod. He smiles. On the way back, you walk softly, holding the lantern like a small flame inside your chest. The moon climbs higher. The air still smells of mochi and firewood ash. You don't know the name of the festival. You don't need to. Because from now on, that night is yours. That morning, something felt different. Not the weather. The sky was still clear, tinged with smoke and dew, just like every other morning. Not the temple bell, the rooster's crow, or the patter of children running through the yard. But the eyes. They weren't the eyes of someone scolding you for tying your obi wrong, or teaching you to plant rice without bruising the stems. They were hers. You didn't know her name. Only when you bowed your head in thanks after receiving a basket of vegetables did you look, and half a face behind a paper fan. Eyes gently curved, like a smile that hadn't yet dared to become sound. The fan tilted slightly, then closed. That was all. But the rest of the day, your heart fluttered like a cricket trapped in a bamboo tube. You tried to act normal, still pushed water carts, harvested in neat rows, still swept the temple in the direction of the wind. But now and then, you glanced. She didn't look back, which somehow made it feel like you were stepping into a slow melody, where every signal was delivered in silence. Lesson 1. In feudal Japan, falling for someone wasn't a lightning strike, it was a leak. Tiny, slow, discreet. It's an extra gesture, a sleeve brushing past. A gaze held half a second longer than needed. If you dared too much, you were accepted. You were ignored. She was the daughter of the papermaker. Every sheet in the village passed through his hands. And perhaps that's why every gesture of hers felt like that same paper. Delicate, but razor sharp if mishandled. You smiled when offering her a cup of water. She bowed, deeper than necessary. You asked a very soft question about the small flower tucked into her hair. She didn't answer. She drew her fan from her sleeve, opened it, and fanned herself. Not for heat, but rhythm. You fell quiet. Work continued. But that afternoon, you saw the same kind of flower resting silently on the stone ledge when passing behind the temple. No one else was there, only the flower. And the temple bell rang out, like a warning for your heart. Lesson 2. In feudal Japan, love was a team sport. But not between you and the one you liked. Between families, villages, and rice fields that once argued over irrigation lines. Loving someone was the concern of an entire community. A stray glance could make families stop speaking for a year. An unintentional touch could get you exiled. That night, you passed the village square. She was standing alone, holding a paper lantern, not looking at you. But I'm not leaving either. You bowed. Lightly. Perfectly measured. She bowed just slightly. A breeze passed through. She raised a hand to steady the lantern. You reached out to fix a splintered piece of bamboo. For exactly 2 seconds, your fingers touched. No one spoke, but your heart felt as if it had committed something grave or sacred. She bowed again, deeper. She withdrew her hand, then left. You stayed there, watching, not daring to follow, not daring to speak. Because here, even addressing someone warmly could be considered too intimate, unless an elder from their family permitted you. That night, you couldn't sleep. Not from romantic restlessness, but from analyzing every second like a detective at a crime scene. Was she waiting for me? Why that exact time? Was the touch intentional? or just a coincidence? And that bow? Was that an acceptance? Or merely the bare minimum politeness to spare your dignity? Lesson 3. In feudal Japan, romance wasn't a spark. It was smoke. Soft, fragrant, spreading slowly. If you stepped too close, you'd scatter it. The next morning you went to the well early. She was already there. This time you said nothing. Just bowed. She bowed in return. Then I poured water for you before walking away. You lifted the cup to your lips but didn't drink. And that's when you saw she had left a flower petal inside. Not big, not obvious. Just a sign. Enough to keep you silent the whole day. While inside, your soul screamed into spring. The morning began with a piece of paper. Not a letter, not a decree. Just a small slip, the calligraphy delicate like roots growing from the morning mist. Today, you come to the temple. You asked who sent it. No one answered. You asked why. The head of the household only smiled and handed you a cloth pouch with rice balls. In feudal Japan, when someone invites you to a temple, you do not decline, whether it's for learning, repayment, or to see if your karma has gotten too heavy. The path up the mountain twisted, moss clinging to the stones like time, trying to grasp each step. You climbed stone stairs worn shallow like the inside of a bowl. No voices, only the soft con-con of a bamboo tube filling with water, tipping over and falling, like nature nodding eternally. The temple gate appeared after a bend, simple, the wood gray with sun and wind, the roof curved lightly like the lashes of Buddha. You bowed, deeply, not out of fear, but because this place made you want to bow. A monk stepped out to greet you. He didn't speak. I just nodded and turned, leading the way. You followed. Along a long corridor, the old wood creaked like it was breathing. Through a rock garden with no flowers, yet more beautiful than any rose garden you'd ever seen. To a small room. Inside, a tatami mat, a straw broom, a steaming teapot, and no greeting. Lesson 1. In the monastery, speech is a last resort. You're not forbidden to speak. It's just, why would you? When you can bow, when you can pour tea, when you can sweep the courtyard. You were handed a broom, not the long-handled kind from your hometown, but a tight bundle of straw meant to be held with both hands. The monk looked at you, then demonstrated a single sweep. You watched and nodded. Easy enough. You mimicked him, and instantly made a mistake. You swept too fast, too hard, kicked up dust onto the mossy path. The monk looked at you, said nothing, just swept again from the beginning. Slow, deliberate, as if each sweep was an apology to the earth. You blushed, nodded, tried again, slower, quieter. This time, the wind didn't rise, the dust didn't scatter. The courtyard gleamed as if pressed flat by a full moon. Lesson 2. Meditation isn't learned. It's practiced. Not through books, not through teachings, but through doing something repeatedly until your mind stops resisting. After sweeping, you were invited into the tea room. No chairs, no table, just mats and tea. The monk sat across from you, eyes half closed, pouring tea so slowly it felt like time itself was passing through the spout. You didn't dare breathe loudly. A cup was placed before you. You bowed deeply. I lifted it with both hands and drink tea without thinking about it for the first time in your life. Not its smell, not its taste, not how you'd describe it. Just drank. I just sat still. Just listen. To yourself sinking inward. In the afternoon, you joined the monks in wiping down the floors. Bent low, damp cloth in hand, moving in horizontal lines. No orders were given, no tasks were assigned. Everyone quietly wiped their section and somehow knew when to stop. When the floor was clean, everyone stood at once. No cue, no signal. It was as if everyone had studied the same music you were hearing for the first time. You were allowed to stay the night. A private room, bamboo mat, no lock, no light, only the sound of a small bell hanging outside the eaves, and the moonlight filtering through wooden slats, like a question that didn't need answering. You lay down and realized you hadn't spoken a single word in 8 hours, and strangely, you had never felt your mind so still. The morning after your night at the temple, you descended the mountain with footsteps so light that it felt as if you'd left a few kilograms of worry behind on the mossy stone path. You didn't say a word the entire way down, only nodded to the breeze, to the sparrows just waking, and to the sun sketching golden outlines along the bamboo forest. When you returned to the village, everything seemed unchanged. The slanted rooftops, the smell of wood-burning stoves, the clucking of chickens, the gurgle of water. But the way people looked at you, just a beat slower, felt like they were checking to see if the temple had made you different. Then, you were given a task that had nothing to do with meditation. Take the goods to market. It was a basket of hand-woven bamboo items, fans, pot lids, sieves, delicate, sturdy, and still carrying the faint scent of the older man's sweat who'd been weaving them all week. You bowed, tucked the basket under your arm, and thought, all right, just selling stuff. Easy. That is, until you stepped into the village market. Unlike the noisy bazaars of the modern world, a feudal Japanese market was a strange symphony of soft voices, laughter, and evaluation. Everyone spoke quietly, but everything was heard. Every glance, seemingly random, meant more than 10 lines of negotiation. Buyers didn't say, too expensive. They tilted their heads. Sellers didn't yell, end-of-day discounts. They just switched the product to the other hand, so the light hit it differently, letting the customers see the value for themselves. And you, fresh from a day of Zen silence, now sat between 3 aunties selling tofu, seaweed, and pickled plums, feeling like a daikon root that had wandered into a soybean patch. You laid out your mat, arranged the items, sat straight-backed like you had in the monastery, smiled at passers-by. Mistake. Here, sellers didn't smile too much, lest they seemed to be hiding flaws in their goods. An older man stopped by. I picked up a bamboo fan. I twirled it once. I didn't ask the price. You hesitated. Just as you were about to speak, the tofu auntie beside you gave a slight cough, so soft, yet charged with the weight of a haiku judge. You froze. The older man placed the fan back down, nodded. He took a few coins from his sleeve and put them on your mat, then walked away. You hadn't said a single word, your first sale, without knowing how or why it worked. But peace didn't last. A middle-aged woman picked up a bamboo basket, inspecting it thoughtfully. Then, gently, she said, "The Tokimura family sold this same basket 2 coins cheaper last week." You gave an awkward chuckle, nodded, unsure what to say. The pickle seller to your left leaned in. "But this one's weave is tighter." The woman looked at you, then the basket, then back at you. You blinked. The air tightened like a drawn bowstring. Even the cat sleeping on the roof opened one eye. Panicking, you blurted, "If you'd like, I can lower the price a little." The pickle seller snapped her head toward you, lips pressed tight. You'd just committed a major faux pas, offering a discount before being haggled. In this market, lowering your price too quickly shamed the buyer and made them look like they couldn't afford it. But you looked greedy if you held your ground after they complimented your goods. It was a silent dance of honor and grace, and you hadn't learned a single step. The woman said nothing. She placed the basket back down. nodded, and walked away. You bowed, still unsure who was mad, who was right, or if you were about to be exiled from the tofu circle forever. The rest of the market passed in a blur of summer cicadas, clinking coins, and the sharp scent of dried fish. You learned when to stay quiet, when to bow, and how high to place your products, visible enough to catch the eye but not so high that it looked boastful. A young boy came over and asked to see a fan. You handed him one. He twirled it for a bit, then returned it without buying anything. But he smiled, and in that slight smile, you saw something familiar. Like the night you danced off beat, off rhythm, and still been embraced by the village. You packed your goods as the sun began casting long shadows over thatched rooftops. Only a few fans and small baskets remained. An older woman stopped by. Picked two. I didn't haggle, but before she left, she gently ran her fingers over the basket and said, "Whoever wove this wasn't in a hurry." You bowed deeply. It wasn't a compliment exactly, but it was a gift. On your way back, your arms ached, your back was sore, but your heart felt light. You'd survived your first village market, not richer, not more popular, not any closer to love, but with one important lesson. Not all danger comes with shouting. Sometimes the smallest glance in a quiet country market can rattle your heart more than a full-blown confession. You hear the flute before the drum. The melody is thread-thin, slipping through paper walls and stone steps, landing in your ears like an invitation. Not rushed, not festive, just a very Japanese way of saying, "Today, there is a wedding." You step outside and see long white ribbons tied to the bamboo branches, fluttering in the breeze like well wishes trying to take flight. Everyone in the village is dressed nicely, not flashy, never flashy here, but in kimono, folded with care, in calm colors, collars pressed sharp, and sashes tied with not a single thread out of place. You're pulled along. No one asks if you want to go. Because in this village, a wedding isn't a private affair. It belongs to everyone. Every bow, every beat of the drum, every soft mochi is a thread weaving the village together. And today, you're a part of that thread. Whether folding rice cakes or carrying a box without knowing what's inside. The bride emerges from a low-roofed home at the east end of the village, the fan in hand, eyes lowered, lips pressed. Not a smile in sight. You're startled for a second. This doesn't look like the radiant bride. But then you realize, here, weddings aren't about feeling grown up. They're about being grown up. People don't marry for passion. They marry with a belief that if two people endure long enough and wait patiently enough, then love will bloom, just like rice from muddy water. The groom stands waiting under the old pine at the center of the shrine yard, their hands folded over his stomach, back straight as a line from scripture. When the bride reaches him, they bow to each other, then sit. No holding hands, no cheek kisses, just a single bowl of sake passed back and forth, 3 sips. Each sip's a vow to live, endure, and be silent at the right moments. An elder reads a poem. His voice is low but not mournful. Each word wrapped like rice paper, light, dissolving into the air. You don't understand every phrase, but you catch the meaning. Love doesn't need words, just eyes that know when to stop. Children run in circles with paper lanterns and mochi in hand. An older woman nudges a soft rice cake into your palm, round, sticky, filled with red beans. "For luck," she whispers. Then glances at you, and over to the girl you saw the other day. She's in a kimono too, the fan in hand, not looking at you, but standing nearby. You turn away and chew the mochi. It's sweet, chewy, and sticks to your teeth like you've unknowingly signed a lifelong contract with the village. without reading the fine print. After the ceremony, the feast begins. No stage, no MC, just circular trays laid on the floor. The elders sit in the center, the young on the outer rim. Children eat first. Outsiders, like you, are seated near the village head. It's a subtle way to study you. Do you hold chopsticks the right way? Do you bow before eating? Do you lift the rice bowl with both hands? You're just trying not to spill soy sauce on your sleeve. And then it happens, the moment you dreaded. The bride's mother approaches your table. It sits beside you, looks directly into your eyes. No smile, no words. You bow, deeply. She nods. Then silently pick up a piece of pickled radish and place it in your bowl. You accept it, lifting your chopsticks like you're about to hold a knife that's already been sharpened. Conversations continue around you. Sake is poured. Laughter echoes, but you hear nothing. Your ears ring from that gaze, from that one piece of pickled radish, from the sense that this mother, perhaps your future mother-in-law, has just judged your entire soul based on how you chew. Toward the end of the feast, a group of men begins to sing. Not cheerfully, not somberly. It's a folk song, slow and full of blended joy and sorrow, like a river that flows past two villages bound by a marriage arranged 3 harvests ago. You sit still. Your stomach is full, but your heart isn't sure. There's a tightness in your throat, not from the mochi, but from the quiet realization. In this place, love isn't just between two people who look at each other. It's between you and an entire village watching you back. You wake up feeling like you spent the night sleeping inside a tea bag. Your body aches, your head buzzes, and your dreams smell faintly of old ginger and boiled daikon. Maybe it was the mochi overload from last night. Or maybe you've caught the first cold of the season. No fever, but your skin feels warm in a way that doesn't belong. No cough, but your throat scratches as if it's forgotten how to be clear. And the weariness isn't in your muscles, it's in your gaze. You spot that dull, off-center look in the water's reflection at dawn, where your face appears and retreats simultaneously. Your host glances at you and frowns, softly but unmistakably, not with anger, but with a quiet disapproval. Because here, illness is something you only have when given permission. Today, you're taken to the village healer. His home sits beneath an ancient persimmon tree. The earthen walls are cracked in fine, deep lines, like the forehead of someone who's lived long enough to bother no longer explaining things. The scent of herbs hits you at the gate, thick, earthy, and heavy, like a nap you can't fully wake from. You bow and step inside. And there he is, small, silver-bearded, wrapped in worn hemp robes, holding a bamboo pipe that exhales smoke in soft, steady spirals, like incense blessed by moss. He doesn't greet you, just stares, for a while, then nods. Then, he extends his hand. You, by instinct, extend yours. He grips your wrist, not roughly, but with startling precision. It feels like being caught thinking thoughts you shouldn't. His fingers are bony, and there is dirt under the nails, but warm. Not hot, not cold, just right. It is as if that hand has felt 1,000 pulses and 1,000 unnamed worries, and it still carries room for one more. Liver's stuck, he mutters, maybe to the persimmon tree. Heart's pressing on lungs, spleen's heavy, not a new sickness. You blink. He looks at you again, waiting as if you might confess something. You mumble a vague response. He nods as if that confirms everything, then turns to a shelf and pulls out a bundle of herbs. Golden leaves, green stems, purple roots, and a few strands that look like the hair of a fairy too old to appear in stories anymore. He tosses them into a kettle, then says, "Drink 3 times," before speaking. If you still want to talk after that, boil it again. You don't have time to ask what that means, because he's already brought out a jar. Inside, 2 leeches, swimming. You swallow hard. He smiles. Don't worry, they don't suck blood. Just read your pulse. You can't tell if he's joking, so you sit still. He places the jar on the table and tells you to stare at the leeches. 2 minutes. No blinking. You try. Last 45 seconds. He sighs, as if that explains everything wrong with your mental state. After a scalding bowl of herbal tea hot enough to scrape the ghost off your tongue, he speaks again, quietly. It's not a cold. It's a blockage. You freeze. Not the kind from food, but something deeper. A choking of the heart. He places a small stone in your palm. Take this, not for talking, for keeping still. You ask no questions. You don't need to, because his eyes, his hands, the scent still clinging to his sleeves. They've already given you a diagnosis you never asked for. Once you weren't sure you were ready to hear that you're not tired from illness. You're tired from bracing yourself so hard, for so long, to exist in a world without yet figuring out how to welcome you. You bow low. You thank him. He doesn't reply, just pour another cup of tea, and gazes out at the porch, where the light of early noon is falling like the dust of old memories. You return from the healer's house at midday, sunlight slanting softly across the porch, the bitter taste of tea still clinging to your throat, and the tiny stone he gave you is still warm in the sleeve of your robe. You don't ask why. You don't plan to use it as medicine. But strangely, just holding it in your palm makes your heart beat a little slower, as if someone had quietly untied a knot inside you. The moment you step into the courtyard, you see her waiting. The woman you saw at the wedding. Ash gray kimono, sleeves folded neatly, eyes stern but not cold. She doesn't say hello. She holds out a neatly wrapped bundle and says softly, "It needs mending." You open it, a torn piece of kimono, not a large tear, not deep, just a split seam along the shoulder, right where someone might place a hand in greeting. A small tear, but in a place you can't ignore. You've never sewn anything in your life besides a shirt button, with leftover thread and a rusty needle. But you nod, because here, refusing would be worse than sewing it badly. She leads you to a room beside the kitchen, a low table, gentle light, a spool of black thread, a long, fine needle so delicate you feel one breath could erase it. You sit. Your hands tremble. Not from fear of the needle, but from the weight of what this fabric might carry. Maybe it's formal wear. Maybe a keepsake. Maybe a mother's gift passed down to a daughter. Each stitch might be a promise. You thread the needle, pierce the fabric, and promptly stab your finger. You don't make a sound. Just bow your head, dab the blood with your sleeve, and try again. A kimono isn't hard to mend, but it's hard to keep the rhythm. The silk is thin, the grain slides. The thread is stiff, and the cloth is too soft. It feels like trying to write calligraphy with a toothbrush. You stitch each loop, slowly, unevenly, but with care. You wonder about the one who wears this. Did she bow her head during the ceremony? Did her hands tremble while tying her obi? Did she hold her breath when someone touched her shoulder? You sew as if you're apologizing for living too fast, for not understanding that some things don't need to be replaced, just quietly mended with sincerity. She returns just as you tie the final knot. You offer the kimono with both hands, without looking up. She receives it, inspects the seam, says nothing. Neither praise nor criticism, just nods. like a comma in a sentence that hasn't finished. Then she hands you a warm cup of tea. Not to drink, to hold, to steady your hands. You sit a while. No words between you. The wind stirs the thatched roof. The afternoon sun slides across the repaired seam, still crooked but straighter than when you began. She stands, bows, not deeply, but just enough for you to know. Your effort was seen. You leave that little room with sore fingers, but a softer heart. And you realize, in a place where everything is quiet, light, and restrained, every gesture, every stitch, every bow speaks more clearly than any language ever could. When you were called awake, dawn had barely broken, and dew still clung to the rim of your straw hat. Not to head to the fields, but to the kitchen. Preparing for the autumn ceremony, the matron said. Her voice wasn't harsh, but carried the authority of someone who'd cooked her whole life and had no time to repeat instructions. She shoved a headscarf into your hands and nudged you toward the back kitchen, where you were immediately ambushed by the smell of pickled radish, damp firewood smoke, and responsibility. Inside, a group of women had been working since before the moon called it a night. They were washing vegetables, rinsing rice, shaping mochi, and talking with the rapid rhythm of rain on banana leaves. You didn't understand a word, but their glances made one thing very clear. There's the newcomer. Don't let them burn anything. You were assigned to a tiny older woman with silver hair tied in a neat knot and eyes as sharp as a lotus root knife. She handed you a basket of rice and gestured, "Wash." You smiled and nodded. She didn't smile back, just watched to see how you would do it. You poured in water, swirled your hand gently. She immediately snatched the basket away. "Not swirl, scrub," she said. Not loudly, but just loud enough that nearby women looked over as if you just called sushi noodles. You were taught from the beginning. Pour water, swirl once, discard the first rinse, then begin scrubbing gently, with fingertips, like waking each grain from its 3-season nap in muddy fields. Don't crush the rice. Don't let the water get cloudy. Don't slack with your hands. After the third rinse, you poured the rice into the steaming barrel. A giant wooden pot set over a glowing charcoal stove. Steam rose, sweet and clean, smelling like a thank you whispered from earth to sky. You bowed slightly as if asking permission before closing the lid. Then, you were moved to the mochi prep team. The glutinous rice had to be pounded with heavy wooden mallets. 2 people per team, 1 pounding, 1 flipping the dough. You watched, dizzy, because a single misstep meant the mallet hitting a hand instead of rice. But the 2 women were perfectly in sync, like they'd practiced in the womb. Your job was only to shape the mochi, and you, who once thought you had a decent sense of aesthetics, quickly molded a mochi that looked like someone had accidentally stepped on it. The woman beside you looked, said nothing, just peeled off the botched dough and reshaped it. Fast, smooth, and so gracefully you wondered if you should go back to hauling water instead. By midday, you were given an easy task. Watch the soup pot. Just stir occasionally. Sounds simple. You stirred too hard. The tofu broke apart. Then too softly. The bottom began to burn. When you tried to scrape it up, smoke rose, straight into the face of a woman slicing seaweed nearby. She didn't scold me. She just looked at you, then walked away. Someone else came over, quietly lifted the ladle, and skimmed off the unburned top layer. She murmured, "Next time, stir clockwise." You nodded, cheeks burning hotter than the stove. But no one shouted. No one kicked you out of the kitchen. They let you stay, to wash the pot. When the meal was laid out, you were invited to sit and eat that afternoon. There was fragrant sticky rice, red bean mochi, light seaweed soup, crispy grilled fish, all arranged so carefully it felt more like a sacred offering than lunch. You sat next to the child who had once helped you learn to sweep. They smiled and pressed into your hand a misshapen piece of mochi, the very first one you had made. "This one's special," they said. You smiled, and this time, everyone smiled at you. Maybe you weren't a great cook. Maybe your mochi looked odd. Maybe your stirring was disastrous. But you didn't run. And in a place like this, where every meal is the result of a harvest, a village, and a silent tradition passed hand to hand, patience itself is a kind of seasoning. The morning began with a steady thudding on the roof. Not rain, not rats, but the sound of a wooden mallet striking bundles of straw. Rhythmic, deliberate. It was as if someone were gently waking up in the early winter by rethatching the eaves. You stepped into the yard. The sun was not yet up, and a cool breeze drifted from the bamboo forest to the north, carrying the damp scent of rotting leaves and last night's leftover chill. On the rooftop, two men were fastening fresh thatch to replace what the early autumn storms had loosened. One of them waved at you. No shout. There is no clear signal, just a wave, as if to say, first to see, first to climb. You climbed the ladder, hands moving fast, because it was made of bamboo and tied with fiber rope, each step soft and uncertain, as if even the ladder itself doubted whether you were light enough to trust. Your face pressed close to the roof. Behind you, the sky opened. No railings, no second roof, just air and emptiness. At the top, they handed you a bundle of straw the size of a pillow. It was pungent, itchy, unwieldy. You hugged it and sneezed 3 times. The man beside you didn't laugh. He handed you a cloth. And so you began to learn how to tie thatch into layers. Not too thick, or it would weigh down. Not too thin, or the rain would leak. The ropes must be tight enough to resist the wind, but not so tight that they snap the straw. Each bundle must overlap evenly, like fish scales, from bottom to top. That way, every bundle becomes part of the roof, not just something laid on top. Your teacher was the older man who always sat folding paper at the village shrine. His hands were lined with scars, but every knot he tied felt like a poem softly pulled from memory. "A house doesn't just block the rain," he said. "It guides the wind where it needs to go." You nodded, though you didn't fully understand. Up on the roof, everything looked different. You saw the village from a view you'd never had. Roofs lined like rows of folded pages, cooking smoke curling into the air. It's like a faded script from an old book. Children running across the courtyard, elders sweeping fallen leaves, chickens tapping the dirt like they were waiting for sunlight to answer. And you, perched between earth and sky, tying each straw bundle to the rafters, felt, somehow, like you were exactly where you were meant to be. No one rushed you. No one praised you. No one checked your work. There was only the wind, the sound of mallets, and the scent of sun-warmed straw. You tied one knot wrong. The straw slipped loose and fell to the ground. An older woman sitting below didn't even look up. She said, "The wind will remember that." You didn't understand, but you tied it again, tighter, with care, with direction. Someone handed you a ball of rice wrapped in bamboo leaf by midday. Inside, sesame salt, a few crisp slices of pickled radish, and something else you couldn't name. Maybe the taste of quiet recognition. Maybe the scent of being trusted. You sat on the roof, ate slowly, eyes drifting far, mind still. Just eating. Just quiet. Just thankful. By afternoon, as the sun slanted across the eaves, the roof was complete. The new thatch was brighter, thicker, more beautiful. You climbed down, legs aching, shirt full of straw dust. My fingers are sore from the rope, but your heart was light. And when the evening breeze came, you stood beneath the roof you helped build and felt the wind pass over without whistling through the gaps. Just a soft, contented sigh. You looked up, and for the first time in your life, you understood the difference between a place to hide from the rain and a place to call home. A place with a straw roof, a steady firekeeper, a warm bowl set out without asking, and the kind of patience reserved for hands still learning how to belong. The wind shifted in the afternoon, not suddenly, not with a howl, just a subtle turn, as if the earth tilted ever so slightly, and the gentle autumn breeze became something colder, sharper, slipping beneath your collar without so much as a knock. You stood in the yard, hands still scented with dry straw, and watched your breath begin to show in the air. No one in the village said anything. They opened their wooden chests and pulled out warmer clothes. The older woman who once taught you how to shape mochi tapped you lightly on the back. "Stay indoors tonight," she said. Not an invitation, a piece of advice. You nodded. Your stomach was a little hungry, your feet are a little sore, and yet, for reasons you couldn't name, your heart felt calm. As the sun vanished, the whole village sank into a warm amber glow, not from electricity, not from candles, but from embers. Small hearths came alive in the corners of every home. Clay stoves with half-burnt firewood and pots of gently simmering water. Not for cooking anything in particular, but to fill the air with the scent of warmth. You sat beside the hearth. Others sat too, not in rows, not by assigned place, just wherever there was room. Whoever came first sat closer. Whoever came later leaned in, shared shoulders, shared backs. No one minded, because here, closeness was just another form of comfort. The girl who makes paper, the one you once stole glances at from behind a fan, was seated in the far corner. She held a roll of fabric in her lap. I didn't look at you, but now and then, she blew gently across her tea at the exact moment you were doing the same. No words were exchanged, and none were needed. An older man pulled from his sleeve a worn shamisen. The sounds it made weren't exactly music, more like the dry whisper of wind against weathered wooden walls, sparse, cracked. But each pluck made the room feel a little softer. It was as though the night was speaking in a language you could finally understand. The lady of the house began to talk. Not a ghost story. Not quite a fairy tale either. Just a memory. Of a winter long ago when snow piled so deep even the mice gave up on sneaking into the kitchen. She spoke slowly, as if each word had to pass through the warmth of the coals before reaching your ears. The room fell quiet, not out of obligation, but because everyone wanted to preserve the moment, like keeping your hands in a patch of warmth. You leaned back against a wooden pillar, rested your head on a soft bundle of straw. Someone passed you a warm cup of sake. You didn't see who, but their hand left behind just enough warmth to prove they were real. You took a sip, and your heart settled, like a lake when the wind stops. Night deepened. People began to nod off. Children lay sprawled on woven mats, mouths slightly open, still clutching dolls made from corn husks. No one said goodnight. They adjusted blankets, covered little ones, and stared quietly into the fire. You lay down, too, curling near the hearth. No pillow, no bed, just the red coals, the steady breathing of those beside you, and a darkness that held no fear. Because tonight, you were not alone. You were a breath among many breaths. A quiet sigh folded into the wind beyond the eaves. A stranger who had finally learned how to stay still, say nothing, and still be seen. You didn't wake up because someone called you. You woke because your body knew, this morning the air is different. There is no scent of wood smoke, no familiar crowing of roosters, only the cold, slipping beneath the blanket's edge, brushing past your sleeves, and settling in your pillow's creases like an uninvited guest who always arrives precisely on time. You sit up, still wrapped in the old padded coat. The mat beneath your feet is cold and dry, like the brittle first leaves of winter. Outside, the ground is covered in a fine layer of frost, thin as rice paper. Not snow, but enough to leave footprints that vanish like memories never spoken. On the rooftop, droplets have frozen into tiny beads of glass. Bamboo leaves droop, bowing beneath a silence that feels like a sigh. You step out onto the veranda and inhale. The cold pours into your lungs, makes you cough gently. Not from illness, but because this is the first time you've felt the cold not through books, not in photographs, not from an air-conditioned hum, but real, alive, staring right back at you. A child runs across the yard, arms wrapped around a bundle of firewood. No shiver, no complaint. Just another scarf looped, a polite bow to you, and they vanish toward the kitchen. You follow. Inside, everyone's already awake. No one complains. No one huddles. Only the soft crackle of firewood, the stir of a ladle in a pot, and the quiet rustle of words, spoken like the wind in a warm corner. Someone hands you a bowl of porridge, no meat, just soft rice, a few slices of ginger, a pinch of scallion, and a scent that feels like enough. You eat slowly, not just because it's hot, but because each spoonful seems to warm your hands, then your chest, then something deeper, a part of you that once hid its loneliness like a pebble beneath the tongue. After breakfast, they ask you to split firewood. For the first time, you realize wood isn't just for burning. It's a way to contribute to the warmth that everyone shares. You learn how to place the log just right. How do you grip the axe at the proper angle? How to strike once, cleanly, instead of flailing like a drummer with no rhythm. At first, the wood kicks back. You slip, almost graze your leg. No one scolds. A man beside you steps in, adjusts your stance, and steps back. You try again. This time the axe finds its mark. The log splits, not with a crack, but like a door opening softly. You feel proud. Not too much. Just enough to lift your chin and watch the sky, where clouds drift slowly, thick as uncooled porridge. All morning, you don't say a word. But in the eyes of others, you're no longer a guest. You're the one who carries firewood into the kitchen. The one who sweeps the veranda before the frost settles. The one who notices when the water pot is almost dry, and fetches more wood without being asked. And here, that's how they accept you. No ceremonies. No handshakes. Just the quiet understanding that you help keep others warm besides yourself. When the household gathers around the hearth that evening, you don't wait to be invited. You tend the fire. You split kindling. You pour hot water. You hand a bowl of porridge to the older woman coughing in the corner. The papermaker girl watches you, longer than usual. She says nothing. You say nothing. But the fire burns longer than it did the night before. And the cold outside, still biting at the straw roof, still slipping through the cracks. It feels less cruel now. Because in this house, a part of the warmth is yours. The rain arrived before the thunder had a chance. No warning, no rush. Just tiny droplets at first, clinging to leaf edges, gathering weight, until the whole village wore a soaked, ash-gray cloak. Wind swept through the eaves, sharp and slicing, like the edge of a freshly whetted blade. Doors shut earlier than usual. Fires burned hotter. And you, after a night curled beside glowing embers, were woken by a light tap on the shoulder. Old Tokumasa needs medicine. You nodded, not fully grasping the words yet. The older man had bad joints and couldn't walk. His wife was frail. Their children lived far away, and the only medicine hut sat on the other side of the village. Beyond a slick little hill, a wooden bridge, and a road now soft as porridge. You layered on another coat, tied a straw hat under your chin, and slid your feet into stiff straw sandals. It's still crusty from last night's dew. No one ordered you to go. No one even asked. They just needed someone. And for the first time in your days here, after so much waiting, watching, being helped, you raised your hand. Without hesitation, you stepped out. The wind greeted the back of your neck like a slap. Rain tapped your cheeks, sharp as needles. You bowed your head and walked faster. Mud splashed your trousers. Your hat grew heavier with every drop, but you didn't turn back. Not out of pride. Just because, if not you, then who? You reached the bridge. The wood was slick, the ropes loose. The river below was swollen, rumbling like a beast in a bad dream. You tested one plank, then another. Gripped the rail tight. I didn't look down. Each step is a negotiation with your heartbeat. On the other side, you exhaled. Softly. Here, even survival is done in silence. The medicine shop was a low-roofed house with curling eaves and the overpowering smell of boiling herbs. You felt like you had stepped into the belly of a ginger stew. The old healer watched you from the shadows, not surprised. They didn't ask questions. He handed you a wrapped packet and said, "Keep it dry. If it gets wet, come back." You nodded, clutching it to your chest like it wasn't just medicine but the trust of the whole village, wrapped in paper and quiet expectation. The journey back was worse. Wind harsher, mud deeper. You slipped once and skinned your knee on a stone. Pain bloomed, but you didn't cry out. It didn't stop. Just pulled the package deeper into your coat and kept walking. When you arrived at the Tokumasa house, soaked through, hair dripping, fingers numb, the older woman said nothing. She took your hands, wiped them dry, accepted the medicine, poured tea, and pressed a warm rice cake into your palms. You sat there, wordless, sipping, watching the color return to your fingertips, to your breath, to the space between you and the cold. The older man gave a slow, brief nod. No words, but you understood. It was a thank you meant only for you. No one saw what you did that morning. No one cheered. No one called you a hero. But you knew. You did something for someone else with no one watching. No one needs to clap. And in this world where people rely on one another, where silence is sacred, and the cold seeps in from more than just the wind, that might be the loudest thing you'll ever do. You thought you'd already faced your hardest days. But this morning, when the sound of hammering echoed like thunder from the belly of the earth, you knew today would be different. The master of the house pointed toward the small structure at the edge of the village, low-roofed, with thick black smoke curling out like a dragon exhaling. "Today, the forge," he said, handing you an old pair of straw sandals and a cloth to tie around your head. No further explanation. You bowed, slid on the sandals, and set off. The air thickened near the forge, hotter. The smell of scorched metal, burnt earth, and decades of sweat soaked into timber nearly choked you as you stepped inside. It was dim, lit only by the fire's glow, casting flickers across the face of the blacksmith. A man with sun-darkened cheeks, bark-like hands, and eyes narrowed from a lifetime of staring into flame. He looked at you. "I didn't ask your name. I just handed you a pair of iron tongs and motioned for you to steady the metal. You didn't even have time to nod before the first spark flew. The first sound you truly heard wasn't a greeting, but the hammer striking red-hot iron. Clang. It rang out like a warning. Here, there is only heat and discipline. You gripped the tongs. The heat radiated up your arms. Even though you didn't touch the blade itself, you felt it hum inside your chest. Each strike of the hammer made you flinch. Not from fear, but because the sound was sharp enough to scold anyone who wasn't serious. After a while, he handed you the hammer. No, good luck. Just a nod. You took it. Heavy. Not just in weight, but in what it meant. You swung. Off-center. Sparks flew. He didn't shout. He just raised his hand. A small gesture to correct your angle. You tried again. I still missed the mark. The metal bent. He said nothing. I took the hammer back. Quietly started over. You felt ashamed. Not because you were corrected, but because you realized. Your one wrong strike cost him 5 minutes of work. You stepped back, shirt clinging with sweat. Your whole body ached, though you hadn't done much yet. But you didn't walk away. You stayed, watching, learning in silence. You observed how he fed the fire, how his hand worked the bellows like he was guiding his breath, how he struck with precision, not power. At noon, he poured you a bowl of warm water. No tea, no salt, just water. But you drank it as if rinsing away some quiet pride you hadn't noticed was there. In the afternoon, he let you try again. Not with a blade this time, just a small nail. You struck, lightly, centered. He nodded. They still didn't smile. But this time, his gaze wasn't checking. It was entrusting. You understood. And for the first time in your life, you felt trusted not because you were good, but because you had listened long enough. As sunset bled across the village sky, you left the forge with soot-streaked hands, ears still ringing with the rhythm of iron, and something profound within you straightened. Like a once-warped blade reheated, reshaped, and finally struck true. You hadn't planned to go anywhere today. After the forge, your hands ached as if each finger carried a small stone. Your back throbbed. Your shoulders were stiff. All you wanted was to sit by the fire, chew on some pickled radish, and breathe until night fell. But the sky had other plans. As you rubbed your hands under the eaves, a young boy came running. He bowed and said, "The master calls you to the temple." No reason, no reward, just a summons. You stood up. You didn't ask why. Here, the more you ask, the easier it is to lose your way. Sometimes, the quickest way to understand is to go. The path to the temple was the same as last time. Winding, moss-covered, smelling of cold earth. But this time, you weren't there to sweep the courtyard or learn to pour tea. You were there to sit. The old monk waited for you on the temple steps. He didn't smile. He handed you a coarse robe and a thin mat. You followed him into the main hall. Inside, it was so still you could hear the rustle of your clothing. No lights. Only a single stick of incense burned slowly, the scent of sandalwood weaving through your sleeves, skin, and chest. Not fragrant, but real. You sat down. There were no instructions, no chants, only silence. After a while, the monk rang the bell. Its sound wasn't loud, nor fast, nor urgent, just a deep tone that echoed far, like the earth whispering as the seasons change. And for the first time in this long string of survival days, you sat completely still. You didn't think of food. You didn't think of the girl with the fan. You didn't think of the axe, the charcoal, or the porridge pot. You just sat, breathed in, breathed out. I listened to the bell, breathed in, breathed out. And you realize that even stillness has a rhythm. You don't know how long you sat. When you opened your eyes, the monk was gone. Only the soft wind drifted through a crack in the door. The incense had burned halfway down, and inside you, something had quietly let go. Not a burden. but the last sound of old days gently sent off with a bell. You left the temple just as dusk began to fall. The wind carried the faint scent of incense still clinging to your hair. The village below had begun to glow with lamps. You strolled. Not because you were tired, but because you didn't want to lose the calm you just found. No one asked what you had done at the temple. No one needed to. But that night, as you sat by the fire, holding a bowl of porridge, someone gently placed a roasted sweet potato in your hand. They said nothing, just nodded. You nodded back. And in that moment, every sound in the world felt unnecessary. Ban dich ting and muot ma, gyun guyen gyong kadiu dang, apnu sao, ban kong tuk day jenguite mui tro. Or the crackle of firewood. Not even the soft breathing of someone lying beside you. There was only a strange light seeping through the paper doors. Not golden, not warm, but white. So white it sent a chill down your spine. You sat up, lifted the thin mat, and stepped out to the veranda. And you saw. The entire village lay silent beneath a blanket of pure white snow, as if the sky had sent a wordless apology to the earth. No one said anything. Only a few small footprints traced their way from house to house. The bamboo trees in the yard bowed like older men, enduring yet another season. Thatched roofs were blanketed in white like someone had tucked the village under a soft quilt of unspoken worries. You stood still for a long moment, then realized your feet were freezing. Not from the snow, but from the absence of anything beneath them to keep the warmth in. The house mistress gently pulled your arm, guiding you back inside. She didn't scold me. She didn't rush. She just placed a thick pair of socks and an old padded jacket in your hands. "Wine barriers today," she said. You didn't ask questions. There was no need. Here, when the snow falls, everyone knows what to do. No one needs to give orders. If you have hands, you tie ropes. If you have a back, you carry wood. If you have warmth, you share it. You followed a group from the village out to the fields, not to farm, but to build windbreaks. They weren't tall. They weren't sturdy. Just a few old bamboo stalks, some bundles of straw, and twine worn soft from use. But they were placed exactly where they needed to be. At wind-prone corners, along the sides of homes, beside the last surviving vegetable beds. As if the whole village had once gathered years ago and decided, the wind always comes through here. You held the stakes. Someone else tied the rope. Another person is wrapped in old clothes. No one said much, only the sound of snow dusting your straw hat, white breath rising in silence, and hands brushing past each other, warm but not awkward. You slipped a few times. The ground beneath the snow was uncertain. Once, you nearly fell and instinctively grabbed the shoulder of the man next to you. He turned, gave a slight nod, and kept trying. No scolding, no smile. Here, helping someone stay upright is nothing out of the ordinary. By midday, your group had raised nearly 20 barriers. Not pretty, not symmetrical, but enough to make the wind rethink its route. A girl handed you a rice ball wrapped in bamboo leaves. Inside, warm rice, a few black sesame seeds, and a sliver of pickled plum. A taste like the lingering tang of a long, hard season. You ate, standing beside a straw wall, hands still trembling from the cold, but your mouth was warm, and your heart, strangely, felt full of thanks. By afternoon, the snow thickened. Each step sank deeper, but everyone walked slower now, closer together. Your last task of the day, sealing the drafty gaps around the doors. Not with wood, not with cement, but with scraps of old cloth, straw, and sheets of oiled paper someone had saved since the rainy season. You knelt and stuffed each gap by hand. Your fingers turned red, but they didn't hurt. Because this time, you weren't warming just yourself. By nightfall, the village became a giant paper lantern, each house glowing softly from within, light shining through snow, through paper, and into the hearts of those who once thought they had to weather winter alone. You sat by the fire. Someone leaned against your shoulder. No need to ask who, because here, winter doesn't come to divide us. It comes to remind you, you're not alone. Snow had fallen through the night. Not a storm, not heavy, just steady, as if the sky were retelling old stories using the coldest words it knew. By morning, everything was draped in a hazy white. Familiar paths now felt distant, strange. No one tilled the earth. No one went to the market. But everyone was busy. You were called into the central room. The space was small, the mats cleared wide, and in the middle sat a stack of old fabric, neatly folded, smelling faintly of dyed wood, hemp, and a trace of incense from last week's memorial. "Today we wrap furoshiki," the lady of the house said. Her hands folded cloth as her eyes watched with both sternness and warmth. You'd never wrapped gifts this way. Back home, presents came pre-made, gleaming in glossy paper and ribbons. But here, a gift might be a carefully roasted purple sweet potato, a hand towel patched with care, or a rice cake pressed firm with quiet sincerity. You sat down. Your hands were clumsy, your knots off-center. You wrapped a rice cake too tightly and cracked a corner. The older woman beside you tapped the back of your hand gently. "It's not to hide, it's to protect," she said, then showed you 2 small knots, balanced and snug, like fingers braiding someone's hair before a long journey. You began to understand. Each furoshiki wasn't just a wrapper. It was a way of saying, "I still remember you." A mother wrapping rice cakes for a son leaving for war. A sister wrapping tea for an elderly neighbor with headaches. A teacher wrapping paper and charcoal pencils for a child headed to take the imperial exam. No one says, "I care about you." They reach out, fold a corner of cloth, tie a knot, and hope the other person knows how to read between the lines. You were tasked with wrapping a bundle of pickled plums for the older man you once fetched medicine for. You picked a plain brown cloth. No patterns. Nothing flashy. Folded slowly. Tied the knot firmly. Then untied it and started again. Because the first knot had been tied just to be done with it. This time, you tied it so he could unwrap it easily. By afternoon, villagers began delivering their gifts. No one went alone. Groups of 3 or 4, bundled in padded coats and straw sandals crusted with snow. They didn't knock loudly. They placed the furoshiki at the doorstep, bowed deeply, and silently moved on. You followed one group, holding your bundle of plums. You stepped up, placed the gift at the older man's house, and bowed low. No words, no explanation. Later, he stepped outside, picked it up, looked around, then placed a roasted sweet potato right on that same spot. A silent thank you. You didn't take it immediately. You just nodded and turned away. And in your heart, you understood. Here, giving and receiving aren't 2 separate acts. They are the same breath. That evening, as the wind picked up again outside the eaves, you sat by the fire with the group that had wrapped furoshiki that morning. Everyone was tired, but everyone was warm. Someone told a funny story. Someone quietly wrapped another gift for the temple master in the morning. No one asked what anyone else was wrapping. No one showed off. No one compared. There was only the soft crackle of fire, the warm scent of ginger tea, and a strange, gentle feeling. To be present, without needing to speak. You woke earlier than usual, though no one roused you at night. There was no bell, no hammering, not even the crackle of the hearth. Only a strange kind of silence, the kind that makes you feel as if you're lying inside something sacred, and even the slightest movement might shatter it. The sky was still dark. Outside, the wind whispered. Snow drifted gently, enough to settle on your lashes if you looked up too long. You pulled on a coat, tied your scarf, and stepped outside. The whole village was already there. No one spoke. Each person held a candle. Real wax, unscented, uncolored. Just a slight white taper, its flame flickering in the wind. You were handed one. The person's fingers brushed yours. No eye contact. Just a nod. You followed the procession. No one said where to go. But everyone knew. Each step pressed down a path in the snow. The same trail trodden by hundreds of feet every year, leading up to a small shrine on the northern rise above the village. Not high, not steep, but high enough that by the time you reached the top, you had to slow your breath. From cold, from fatigue, or perhaps from feeling. Hundreds of tiny flames lighted the path. No one walked too far ahead. No one was left behind. Everyone matched the pace of the one beside them. And so the procession moved like a single, silent, warm body. Your hand began to numb. Your fingers tingled with cold. But you didn't switch hands. Because somehow, it felt like that flame wasn't yours. It belonged to something being carried through you. At the gate of the shrine, everyone slowed. No pushing. No rushed bows. Just standing, holding the candle with both hands, waiting. You didn't know what for, until you stepped into the main hall and saw it was empty. No towering statues, no mystical lights. Just a low wooden platform, strewn with dry straw, and a bronze bell hanging silently, as if it had been waiting for a long time. You were invited to place your candle at the altar. There were no formal prayers, just a moment of stillness. You couldn't think of anything to say. No clear wish came to mind. Only one quiet thought. I made it here. From behind, an older woman's voice recited a poem. The candle burns down without leaving ash, only a light left in the hands that held it. You didn't know her name. I didn't know her age. But her voice was warm enough that you no longer felt like a stranger in a crowd of unfamiliar souls. After placing their candles, people stepped back and sat around the shrine courtyard. Some closed their eyes. Some looked up at the sky. Some rested their heads in their sleeves. You sat down, wrapped your scarf tighter, and breathed. No more questions in your head. No more urgent hopes. Just one clear feeling. You were no longer a guest. The sky began to lighten. Not all at once, just patches of darkness softening, fading into pale gray. The snow stopped. No one said, "Happy New Year." There was no countdown, just someone quietly standing, brushing snow from their coat, heading home. Then another. Then you. You walked down the hill, slow steps, spine straight. And inside you, a quiet space opened. Not to hold something new, but to finally put down what was old. The next morning, you woke not to the sound of roosters or anyone calling you. You woke simply because something about the morning light felt different. It wasn't bright. It wasn't warm. But it was lighter, more transparent. And it opened your eyes without a trace of reluctance. You turned, hearing the soft rustle of fabric. Your hands still tingled slightly from holding the candle during last night's ceremony. But instead of pain, you felt at peace, as if your body had already accepted. Yes, today, I'm still here. You retired your scarf, pulled on your coat, and stepped onto the veranda. The yard was strangely clean. No footprints, no scattered straw. Just a large bamboo basket placed in the center, filled with pristine white rice that gleamed in the morning sun like another kind of light. Light is cultivated by earth, sweat, and patient hands through all 4 seasons. The villagers began stepping outside one by one. Everyone was neatly dressed. It's not extravagant, just more presentable than usual. You were handed a wooden ladle. "To wash your hands," someone whispered. You dipped it in water and washed it slowly. Not because your hands were dirty, but because everyone else did it that way. And in that moment you felt, despite all the clumsy things your hands had done, today they were worthy of touching rice. The older man who oversaw the rice fields stepped forward. He said nothing. He bowed deeply before the basket of rice, and everyone followed. No one gave a command. No one had to, but everyone knew exactly when to bow. So did you. Back straight, chin lowered, arms by your sides, not a performance, but a way to let the rice know it was being honored. The ceremony began with a quiet song. No instruments, no drums, just steady clapping. Clap, pause, clap, pause, over and over. A rhythm to anchor the space, a beat to still the heart against the winds of a new year. You were invited to help sift the rice. Your only task was to stir it gently, evenly, not to crush the grains, not to let them spill. But you moved too quickly. A few grains slid off the tray and fell to the ground. You reached down instinctively, but the person next to you placed a hand lightly on your shoulder. Not to stop you, to remind you to pause. "No one picks up fallen rice," they whispered, "because that grain has chosen to go elsewhere." You looked up, nodded. The next time, you moved slower, more rhythmically, more evenly, and you realized each grain was like a breath. If rushed, it would break. The ceremony didn't last long, just about an hour. But it was an hour in which you felt you were doing something right. Something necessary, even if no one said it aloud. At the end, each person received a small bundle of raw rice, wrapped in oil paper, tied with a thin strand of hemp. No one said what to do with it, but everyone carried it home. I placed it on an altar, or tucked it into a wooden chest, as a quiet promise for the harvest to come. You brought yours home, too. You didn't store it. You didn't cook it. You held it in your hands for a long while and felt your heart still. Not because of anything grand, but because for the first time you understood. Gratitude doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's just the act of holding a grain of rice and not letting it fall. The snow returned during the night. Not quietly, like the past few days, but heavy, relentless, falling as if the entire sky had decided to empty everything winter hadn't yet said. You woke to the sound of wind rushing under the roof. No one called you. But when you stepped out onto the veranda, you saw everyone was already awake. No one spoke loudly, but the air was tight, like a drawn bowstring. The children weren't laughing. Adults didn't linger by the fire. Everyone was busy. And then you heard 3 words. Dig the waterway. You didn't understand at first, but minutes later, you stood in the courtyard, shovel in hand, ankle deep in slush and icy water. The waterway, a narrow trench that carried meltwater from the mountain to the village pond, then into homes, had been buried under snow. And if the water couldn't flow, there would be nothing to cook with, nothing to wash with, nothing to survive on. You bowed your head and began digging. At first, it was just snow, but beneath it, mud, and beneath that, frozen stone. Your shovel struck the rock with a hollow clunk, a sound like rejection. The person beside you didn't say anything. They just handed you another tool. A heavier pick, duller, but right for the job. You used everything you had. Your hands ached, your shoulders burned, your fingers stung. There were moments you couldn't tell if the wetness on your face was sweat, dirty water, or tears. The wind didn't stop. The snow kept falling. But you couldn't. Because the water had to flow. It had to. It could not stop. You looked around. Everyone else was doing the same. No one played the hero. No one asked for a break. Each person was like a small part of an old, stubborn machine. By noon, a stretch of the trench had cleared. The water began to trickle. Just a little. But enough to let everyone exhale. Someone patted your shoulder. Didn't smile. Just place a roasted sweet potato in your hand. You ate it with mud still on your fingers. No one told you to wash first. Here, sometimes, survival mattered more than cleanliness. By afternoon, the wind eased. The gray sky gave way to a small patch of blue. A late apology, perhaps. You looked down at the trench, now cleared. Water running again, quietly trickling past the steps, disappearing behind the bamboo wall. No monuments were raised, no flags flew, no names were spoken. But that night, in every bowl of rice cooked, in every pot of tea poured, was that water, silent, freezing, and right on time. You sat by the fire, shivering, hands still red, back still sore. But you didn't complain, because you knew. There are jobs that, when done right, no one notices. But if left undone, everyone suffers. And in feudal Japan, you didn't live to be remembered. You lived so others wouldn't have to worry. You woke up to a different kind of morning. The heavy snow from the day before was gone, and though the sun hadn't broken through yet, the cold felt softer. No longer cutting through your skin, but wrapping around you gently, like someone touching your shoulder and whispering, "It's almost over." You sat up, pulled your coat tighter, and approached the porch. The ground was still damp. The wind is still cold. But tucked in the straw under the eaves, you noticed a small green sprout, emerging like a quiet guest waking up in an old inn. The villagers were preparing, not in a rush, not with noise, but there was a quiet energy in every motion. You were handed a basket of seeds, light, small, but far from simple. Beans, millet, wild greens, a little rice, the woman said as she passed it to you. You have to plant before you can eat. You nodded. A flash of memory passed through your mind. A hot sweet potato shared during that freezing trench-digging day. And you understood. Every seed today is a warm meal tomorrow if placed with care. You headed to the field. The soil was still hard. No longer muddy, but scattered with pebbles and old dead roots from the long winter. You were taught how to rake the surface gently. Use your finger to make a small hole. Drop in a seed, and then cover it with a thin layer of soil, just like a summer blanket. Not too deep, not pressed too hard. Because a seed needs to breathe, not be buried. You planted one hole at a time. Your fingers grew cold. Your back began to ache. But you didn't stop. With each seed, you thought of someone. The friend who steadied you on the snowy bridge. The older woman who gave you mochi on a cold winter night. The child who stuffed pickled radish into your hand when you almost burned the stew. And you realize that sometimes we plant not just for food, but to remember. At noon, the group rested beneath a tree, just a fallen log, but treated like the grandest bench of the season. There were rice balls, pickles, and a simple bowl of seaweed soup. You sat among them, eating slowly, your hands still dusty, your back sore. But you didn't think about stopping. You just glanced at the remaining seeds, hoping the daylight would last longer. Later, an older man approached and handed you a bundle of straw. "Cover the rows you've just planted," he said. You blinked. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. He bent down, spreading the straw gently across the soil like tucking in a sleeping child. "Not to keep them warm," he finally said, "but to keep the birds away. The cold The plants can handle. You nodded and followed his lead. No more questions, because some lessons aren't spoken. They're done with your hands. As the work wrapped up, the field was dotted with patches of straw. Quiet, unfinished, like a painting still waiting for its last strokes. You stood there, hands tucked into your sleeves, the wind brushing your face. Cold, but no longer sharp. You knew it might rain tomorrow. The seeds might not sprout. The birds might find a way past the straw. But still, you planted. Not because you were certain, but because we don't wait to show. We sow, so that there's something worth waiting for. You woke up to a sound you hadn't heard in a long time. Not the clang of a hammer, not the whisper of rain, but laughter. Software just behind the paper door. A chuckle, like someone had just witnessed something miraculous, didn't want to scare it away. You dressed, tied your scarf, and stepped out onto the porch. The wind still blew. The air was still crisp. But the scent in the air had changed. No more old snow. No more eye-stinging smoke. Instead, the smell of young leaves, of fresh running water, of earth newly revealed beneath layers of straw. The scent of something alive. A child crouched in the corner of the garden, gently pulling up the first handful of green vegetables. They waved you over, not loudly, just a small gesture. You ran over, knelt, and saw. The seeds you once planted had grown, not evenly, not in perfect rows. Some were tilted, and others hadn't fully opened their leaves. But undeniably, they were alive. Someone handed you a basket. And for the first time, you harvested not for yourself. Your hands moved gently, like brushing a baby's hair. Each tender leaf you placed into the basket felt like a letter from the earth. Brief, simple, and full of trust. You carried the basket into the kitchen. The villagers had already started the fire. No one said, "Spring is here." They handed you a knife, a cutting board, and a pot of water. You washed the vegetables, sliced them slowly, not because you were still sleepy, but because you wanted every cut to be clean. No one scolded, no one praised. But an older woman looked at you a little longer than usual, then gave a subtle nod. That was enough. The pot began to boil. You added the greens, a pinch of salt, a few slices of tofu. No meat, no broth. The fragrance rose, not rich, not overpowering, just warm, like something ordinary that had been missing for too long. You carried the pot to the mat, poured out small bowls for everyone. They ate in silence, not by rule, but because everyone was busy, feeling. You took your first spoonful. The greens were tender. The broth was clear. The tofu was soft. Nothing remarkable. And yet, it made you want to cry. Not because it was delicious, but because you knew. You had planted it. You had harvested it. You had cooked it. Spring, it turns out, doesn't arrive with blossoms or birdsong. It comes the moment you place that little bowl on the floor, look around, and quietly realize, I did something small, but real. After the meal, someone handed you a new handful of seeds. Next week, we plant again, they said. You nodded. You didn't ask why. Because now, you understand. To live here is to keep going, to keep planting, to keep waiting, to keep cooking, to keep living. The weather is warmer today. Not by much, just enough that you don't need to rub your hands together every 5 minutes. The ground is dry, the leaves fall less frequently, and the sky has that soft gray hue of cooled ashes. You're getting ready to fetch water when the house lady gently touches your shoulder and points toward the gate. Old man Tokujiro wants to go to the spring. Will you take him? You nod instinctively. And only then remember, the spring is not close. It lies beyond two groves of bamboo, a short slope, and a few rocky, uneven path stretches. You head to the gate. He's already there, leaning on a cane, wearing a worn brown padded coat. He doesn't smile. It doesn't explain. He nods to you politely, then begins to walk. You follow. But after just 3 steps, he stops, coughs lightly. Then he smiles with his lips closed as if to apologize for his age. You slow your pace. One hand supports his elbow, the other steadies his cane. The path is the same as always, the same trees, the same stones. Only time feels different now, heavier, slower, as though the sun itself were walking alongside the two of you. No one speaks for the first 10 minutes. There's only the sound of wind rustling through bamboo, the soft shuffle of straw sandals on dirt, and the faint misty breath of the older man after each short rest. You begin to understand. This walk isn't about reaching the spring. It's about having a reason to walk. Halfway there, he points to a mossy tree root. "This is where I proposed to her," he says. His voice is deep, neither sad nor joyful, as though that memory has stayed with him for so long it no longer feels like a story, but more like a scent that occasionally drifts through the corners of his mind. You smile quietly. I don't know what to say, so you bow your head, and you walk on together. With each step, you slow down just a little more. Not for him, but because you want to hear the way the ground sighs beneath your feet more clearly. By the time you reach the spring, it's nearly midday. The water is clear, slow moving. No fish, no people. Just the two of you. One old, one no longer young, standing side by side, wordless yet perfectly understood. Just being here is enough. The older man sits on a stone and washes his hands. For a long time. You don't rush him. You're in no hurry. You sit beside him, scoop water with your hands, and splash your face. Cold, but gentle. It is as if the water has been flowing for years, waiting for you to arrive, carrying the patience of countless others who came before. Eventually, he rises. Don't say, "Let's go." He turns back, and you follow. The way home is the same as before, but it doesn't feel long anymore. Because this time, you've learned to stroll. Not because someone else strolls, but because only when you stroll. Do you start to see where you're going? When you return to the village, the older man rests a hand on your shoulder and bows slightly deeper than before. No thanks, no praise, just that look. And it's enough for you to know that today you did something worthwhile, even if no one saw it and nothing was written down. And that evening, as you sit by the hearth, legs still aching, eyes stinging faintly from the mountain wind, you exhale slowly and realize some journeys take you nowhere at all. But when you return, you are no longer the same. This morning, no one called for you. No tasks were assigned like usual. You woke up, washed your face with cool, healthy water, and stepped out into the yard, waiting, out of habit. But the house lady only glanced at you, smiled softly, and gestured toward the eastern fields. That row is yours. You froze, not because you didn't understand, but because you didn't expect it to come. That day. The one where you no longer follow anyone else. You walk to the plot, a narrow strip of land, just wide enough for one person to kneel and sow. The weeds had been cleared, the straw gathered. All that remained was you, a basket of seeds, and a small rake resting quietly at the edge, as if it too was nervously waiting for you to begin. You removed your scarf, rolled up your sleeves, and deeply breathed. Then, you raked the soil, slowly. Not as quickly as the villagers, not as evenly as the older man you used to assist, but It was yours. You marked shallow furrows. Your hands trembled slightly, because you knew. If you sowed incorrectly, no one would fix it for you. If you planted unevenly, the crops would crowd each other. If the soil were too hard, the roots wouldn't take. You didn't want to make mistakes, but you also knew if you waited forever to feel ready, you'd never start. So you began to sow, one seed at a time. It wasn't neat. It wasn't graceful. Some seeds rolled out of line. Some flew from your hand with the wind. You paused and made minor adjustments. But you didn't blame yourself. Because today you didn't need to do it like anyone else. You just required to do it. Villagers passed by now and then. No one laughed. No one lent a hand. Only glances. Brief, not critical, but recognizing. Like adults watching a child put on sandals by themselves for the first time. Not perfect, but it's worth watching a little longer. By midday, you wiped your brow and looked back at your work. Not straight, not even, but clearly, it had begun. You felt more tired than usual. Not from the soil, but because every action today had come from you alone. No one is guiding your hands. No one is adjusting your posture. Just you, standing under the sky, sweat dripping, hands muddy. And inside, something strange. A kind of freedom laced with nervousness but sweet. Like the first time someone calls you by your name. You covered the rows by late afternoon, gently patting the earth with the rake. No rush. No need to prove anything. Just because you had given it your all. That night, you didn't say much. You sat sipping tea, eyes gazing into the distance, where your row of soil rested quietly under the crescent moon. An elder passed by and gave you a slight nod. You didn't ask, "Did I do well?" Because you already knew the answer. Not from them, but from your own hands. Evening falls earlier than usual, but not because of the cold. It's just that today's light is soft. It is as if the sun, too, knows you're about to leave and wants to send you off with a gentle farewell glow. You weren't given any tasks today. No sweeping the yard, stirring porridge, hauling water, or tending the fire. You were told, tonight, just sit and rest. It felt strange. During your time here, you grew used to always doing something. Sitting still had once felt foreign to you, but today, you sit. On the wooden step, under the old bamboo eaves, beside a child folding paper into a crane. They hand you a crinkled piece of paper. You fumble along, folding with clumsy fingers. It doesn't go well at first. The crease is crooked, but eventually, a shape takes form. Not perfect, but unmistakably a crane. You smile. They smile too. No one says much. In the courtyard, people hang small lanterns of oiled paper and bamboo frames. Not colorful, not ornate, but each one bears a handwritten note. You step closer to read. One says, "Wishing my daughter marries well." Another reads, "Mother." One has no words, just a spiral of ink, like wind curling into itself. The older woman who once taught you to rap furoshiki stands beside you and places a gentle hand on your shoulder. You should write something too. You hesitate, not sure what to say. Then you pick up the brush and draw a circle, like the rice bowl from your first shared meal here. She nods, and hang your lantern with the others. That night, the village gathers around a simple meal. Rice balls, pickled vegetables, and warm soup. It's not a farewell feast. No one mentions that you're leaving. But in their eyes, when they pass you food, pour you tea, or sit just a bit closer than usual, you hear something that doesn't need to be translated. You sit there, surrounded by low conversation, small laughter, and the dim glow of lanterns reflecting off the ground. And then you understand. You survived. Not just for a day, but long enough to no longer be a guest. long enough for someone to look at you and think, ah, that one belongs here. No one gives you a medal. No one throws a ceremony. But you know when the lady of the house bows to you, deeper than ever before, you stayed, not through effort alone, but by simply living, learning, helping, listening. You don't know if you'll truly leave tomorrow. But tonight, as you lie down, beside the small fire, holding that old scarf, ears tuned to the wind slipping through the paper walls, this place no longer feels foreign. It is part of you now. And you, though only a fleeting guest in this tiny sliver of feudal Japan, I have left something behind here too. Thank you for staying until the end of the story. Sleep well. And if tomorrow you wake up beside a rice field, a kitchen, or a windswept thatched house, remember to bow your head, nod gently, and get to work. Because now, you know how.